Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli, Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una, Rabbana zidna 'ilman nafi'a. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everybody to the first session, the taster session of Durus al-Balagha, inshallah ta'ala, that we'll be reading together. So this is a lesson based off the text Durus al-Balagha, but I'll come to that quite soon, inshallah ta'ala. If anybody has any questions about logistics or any sort of admin things, then let me know, inshallah ta'ala, and I'll try my best to answer them. This session will ideally run every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. And we're looking specifically, inshallah, here at the science of what is called rhetoric. What comes under the so the Greeks have this idea what's called the trivium. You have grammar. Just before I carry on, actually, can everybody hear me? Just to make sure that my voice is coming across loud and clear, inshallah ta'ala. Yes, very good. Okay. So this is what's called the trivium. So it's grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and you'll actually see as we study balagha together that they're all intertwined. That you can't really escape. There will be logical discussions that will have to come in. There will be some grammatical discussions. There will be quite a few grammatical discussions at certain points, especially in the early stages, that we will have to sort of unpack. The text or the lesson itself does demand some expertise in the language of Arabic. It doesn't demand that you be either the Imrul Qais or the Sibawayh of the age, but it sort of does demand that you can understand, the difference between a Jumla Ismiya and a Fa'liya, verb structures, the various mafa'il, the awamil, things like this comes not second nature to you, but they don't require too much work in order to understand. So somebody who's in, traditionally this text would be taught in the third or fourth year of a Dars Nidami curriculum, or its equivalent, the Talkhis al-Miftah of Qazwini or the Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani of Taftazani, or texts like that, Sakaki's book, Miftah al-Ulum, whatever, something like that. You'd come in the third or fourth year, and you normally do about 2 texts, depending on the madrasa system you're studying in. So just bearing that in mind. So as we read through, there will be an expectation that students will be able to read the text. I don't know how today's lesson, we're going to see how things go. But normally when I do lessons, I ask the students to do the reading, and I just make sure I just keep tabs on it to make sure the i'rab and the harakat are sort of being followed correctly. Just a quick question then. Have people, if people could just give me what's their background in terms of Arabic study. So what have you actually studied in terms of Arabic before? You can just type in. Yeah, so everybody just give me an indication of where they are at in terms of, so sometimes on this Sibawayh program, we have students who are have actually completed the Dars Nidami curriculum before. They just want to do some revision. Some people have done 2-3 years Ajrumiyya basic readings in some texts. So if people could just give me an indication of what I'm working with for today's session, it will just make things a little bit easier. Everybody heard the question, right? I'm assuming everybody's writing up their little essay. Okay. Okay, inshallah. I'm teaching 2 lessons on the year 2 program as well, alhamdulillah. I teach Sarf and Arabic comprehension and Quranic analysis. So alhamdulillah, that's quite good. Anybody else want to share 6-year study, not finished Alamiya, Dars Nidami? Okay. So we have people with some good prerequisites, inshallah ta'ala, on this specifically. Okay. Dars Nidami. Okay, somebody has completed the Dars Nidami curriculum before. Okay, I'll share my slides. And today's an introductory session, and inshallah, if Allah wills, and we have the time, it may be shorter than a traditional session, because for me, in my head, what an actual lesson looks like is we do the homework. There'll always be homework exercises where you put into practice the various rhetorical concepts you've seen, and the homework will be very, very sort of focused on the Book of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because what is the need for rhetoric except to understand the Kitab of Allah? And when I do the very brief sort of historical overview of rhetoric, you'll understand that it is sort of impossible to extricate rhetoric as a science and the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They come, especially in Islamic history, they are very much meshed with each other. So that's something that's going to be, so what we're going to do, there'll be homeworks where you'll have to take the concepts we've, mashallah, I know the Sharia program, if I'm assuming this is Mullah Yusuf Mullan, somebody messaged me privately to say they did some studies. The Mufti Yusuf Mullan program, very good program. I actually recommend that if people, as an introductory Arabic program, I think it's actually the one we've implemented in the organization I work at, the Karima Foundation. But sorry, what I was saying, homework. God, it's a good place to get distracted, I guess. So homework is every week. I'll tell you where I'm going to take the homeworks from, so you can get the book if you want. But the homework will come from a specific book, and there's a few books I have as resources. And you'll have to take the concepts that we've studied together, try to implement them, try to identify them, and at the beginning of every lesson we'll go through the homework, inshallah. And then at the end of the lesson I'll set the homework. And sometimes what I'll do when I set the homework, if there's lines of poetry, we'll read the lines of poetry together just to get the meanings out. But then actually doing the rhetorical analysis will be something you'll be expected to do on your own. Because, and I'll mention this as a point, and you'll become more aware of this if you carry on studying this program, is a lot of the poetry that's going to be quoted is from the Mu'allaqat. So it's from Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Labid, or Imrul Qais, or Antara, or Tarif, or Tarafa, or whoever. So it's not intuitive Arabic. It's not like, like Qiratul Rashid or something, Tala Sa'i or something, one of these very simple, nice poems. They can be quite difficult to understand. You have to sort of know some vocab and things. Or he quotes a lot of Mutanabbi. They love quoting Mutanabbi. We'll probably, if we carry on, if you start the text today, Mutanabbi will appear, okay? And people may know who Mutanabbi is, the Abbasid poet who lived under Hamdanid patronage. But we'll talk about Mutanabbi maybe a little bit later on, inshallah ta'ala. So let me just share my slides, and then everybody and if anybody has a question, just chuck them my way as we go forth, and I'll do my best to answer them. And then hopefully at the end I'll give about 10 minutes for people just to ask questions and see where things are at, okay? So this is okay, bismillah. If everybody could just let me know in the chat that they can see my slides. Are my slides visible? Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so Durus al-Balagha, this is an introduction to Balagha itself. Okay. I was thinking how I do this, because what I did is when I realized that I wanted to teach this course for White Thread, I started reading on the science of rhetoric. And so rhetoric is nothing, it's not unique to the Muslims. The Muslims did not invent rhetoric, as they didn't invent most sciences, right? So they took, what the Muslims always do is they take something that, it's because Muslims are just a continuation of the human story. So what they do is they take from the chapters or in the book that preceded them, and what they do is they just improve them and they turn them into a tool that is used for the glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Muslims always make things better. That's generally a good little principle to remember. So whether it's grammar, philosophy, logic, rhetoric, whatever it is, Muslims did take from the civilizations that preceded them, and then literally streamlined it and sieved out all of the unorthodox concepts, so that what was left at the end was just pure Sunni Islam. Right, and the great example of that would be somebody like Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, rahmatullahi, master of rhetoric, master of logic, master of philosophy. And you can see that from his tafsir of Quran in the Jawahir. So these are just, I just thought I'd start off by giving you some rhetorical devices, right, in English that you can see. And this is the crazy thing. You see rhetoric everywhere. Rhetoric is just the utilization of language to convey intended meaning. And I think, and so it's existed from the time of Aristotle, right? So Aristotle has the rhetoric. He has a book on rhetoric. And people have always been very nervous about rhetoric, because rhetoric comes intertwined with this idea of political authority, the idea of the demagogue, the man who riles up the crowd, who convinces the masses, the sort of Pied Piper who uses his power of words. The Prophet ﷺ said that there will be people, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, he said that their tongues are sweeter than honey, but their hearts are the hearts of wolves, right? So there's people who they can manipulate you with their tongues, emotional arguments. They can do so many things, the ability to convey emotion and meaning, but at the end of the day, they don't have your best interests at heart, right? So this is why logic and rhetoric come hand in hand, because logic tells you whether it makes sense, rhetoric tells you whether whether it sounds nice or not. So this is the first one is, I think they call it an aphoria or something. It's It's Veni, Vidi, Vici. I don't know if people know, what does that translate to into English? So it's a very famous statement of attribute to Caesar. Allahu A'lam. Nobody brought me Sanad Sahih to say Caesar actually said this. So this is Julius Caesar. What is a very famous phrase in English. I came, I saw, I conquered. Yeah, so it's the tripartite division. There are many, many speakers. And this is why the great speakers, and you can find Sheikh Hamza Yusuf speaks about this a lot, the great speakers have implicit rhetoric ability. Like they can just bring, there's an incredible video. I don't know, I don't hope this is not a weird recommendation. If people can leave this class after and go, not now, obviously stay around for now, but after this class finishes, go and watch Boris Johnson talking about Winston Churchill. Boris Johnson, there's a clip where he's being interviewed on stage. He's just written a biography of Winston Churchill, and he delivers. He sort of iterates Winston Churchill's amazing capability in the English language, in rhetoric. And he brings the quotes, you know, we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll fight them, we will never surrender, never has so much been owed by so many to so few, about the RAF, all of these different quotes. And he shows that what Winston Churchill's done in every single instance is just masterful rhetoric. And that's what people remember. They remember the power of those speeches. So we have Julius Caesar, then we have advertising. Advertising and politics are the two places where you see rhetoric. And inshallah, as you proceed through this course, you'll see it more and more. And this is what the ulama mentioned from fawaid of balagha, is that you'll catch rhetorical devices in places and you'll see what people are doing to try to manipulate your emotions. There's one very clear. What is the big rhetorical device that's being used here? Like, this is like year 9 English levels of like rhetoric. But what's the tool in the middle, the big beefy bliss McDonald's? We'll pretend that this is like some Saudi halal version. Alliteration, right? So that's an easy one, alliteration. And then the final one, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Malcolm X, Allah yarhamhu, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, from, I don't know which speech this is exactly, but I love it. He's got a speech called The Ballot or the Bullet, which I listen to like 2 times a year. I love that speech. But here he's saying, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, my brothers and sisters. Plymouth Rock landed on us. About the migrants who come in, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. I don't know what they call the Puritans or whoever who landed in America. He's talking about them. But can you see this is what's called a chiasmus? It's taking the sentence structure at the beginning and flipping it around at the end. Okay, and you see this. You'll see this in Quran. You see this in the Quran. You see this in the Sunnah. You see this in places. But this is a rhetorical device. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Yeah, that's a chiasmus. Okay, and they say Winston Churchill was very gifted at using chiasmus. But we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Chesterton, the famous Catholic writer, literature, the master of English literature, he used to use chiasmus as well. I can't remember one right now, but so this is something. So this is just the skill of rhetoric, right? You see it everywhere. And so I just wanted to sort of just let people know that even in English, we have this idea of rhetorical devices being used. Okay. Everybody fine with that? And if people want, I can give some book recommendations on finding, sort of learning English rhetoric. There are some good book recommendations, inshallah. There's a very good book. I have it somewhere. I'll put some. I'm happy to put PDFs up on the Canvas. So once people join the course, inshallah, on the Canvas, I'll put up all of my reading recommendations and books that you can follow as we go along. Okay. So, but there's some couple of very good English primers on rhetoric as well. That will be quite helpful because there's more to it. There's all this ethos, pathos, logos, and things like that we don't have time to get into for sure. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so this is a quick overview of the history of rhetoric, Arabic rhetoric specifically now. Okay, so obviously we have the idea being is that, you know, obviously we have in the 6th and 5th Islamic centuries suddenly this development of the science of Arabic rhetoric, which we're going to be studying the fruits of today and for the forthcoming weeks. But all I want to say is that even before the coming of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arabs had this keen sense of rhetoric. And this is going to be emphasized again and again, because we're going to be looking at the Kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some detail as we go through things. And the point being is then, and the great example of that, Muhyiddin Abdul Hamid says, and I'll bring it here because he says this, he says that if you want a proof that the Arabs had a science of rhetoric, then the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala suffices as a proof. Because why would, literally, like you have all of these incredible tafasir, there is no book that has been commented on in all of its various different aspects, like the Kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just in terms of rhetorical tafsir, linguistic tafsir, there are multiple books that can be mentioned. The Tafsir of Razi, Irshad al-Aql al-Salim of Abu Sa'ud Effendi, the Tahrir wa-Tanwir of Ibn Ashur, Al-Biqai's tafsir. All of these incredible tafasir, they just focus on the language of the Book of Allah to explicate for us, and this is the remarkable thing, what the Arabs found intuitive. Right? Does that make sense? So we have to demarcate sciences. We have to say this is ilm al-ma'ani wal-bayan wal-badi'. This is taqdeem wa-ta'khir. This is khabar wal-insha. All of these concepts have to be invented for something that the Bedouin Arab at the emergence of Islam, pre the emergence of Islam, and immediately after the emergence of Islam, is able to, while he's herding his sheep and his camels, and he's got his 4 wives and his 500 kids, and he's off to war with this other tribe because he looked at him a bit funny. That man can catch 10 volumes of tafsir in an instant. Right? That's what Muhyiddin Abdul Hamid is saying here in this passage. This is his introduction to the Sa'd ad-Din al-Taftazani's work on Balagha. If people have Arabic, let me know. I'm going to put this up. Okay, so it's Al-Muqaddimah fi Nash'at al-Balagha wa Tarikhiha, and it's an incredible introduction to the science of Balagha as a history. But he says the Quran on its own suffices to let us know that the Arabs had the sense of awe of language. They understood the power of language. It was everything to them. It was their culture. It was their social system. Their whole existence was predicated. The people of language had an immense Walid ibn al-Mughira, who didn't accept Islam, the father of Khalid bin Walid, who's seen as, because he could literally rile up a crowd. He was the master of prose. He could give these incredible speeches, and the people would see him as this incredible aristocratic leader among them. Not just because of the tribe he's from Banu Makhzum, but it's also the fact that he can talk, he can speak, he can convey emotion, he can capture hearts. He can capture hearts. That's why Shaykh Nuruddin Aitar, rahmatullah alayh, has a book on the balagh of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. There's a book. And maybe as time goes on, we'll pull up some examples. The Prophet had balagha. He had rhetoric. He was able, in a way that nobody else was able to capture people's hearts in just, and that was his character and other such things too. But even the language of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is from his miracles. So this is just a quick example. I'll do it very briefly. And today there's a lot of me talking, and hopefully, well, in very soon I'm going to switch it over to you. So be ready, because we're going to look at some examples from the Quran as well. Okay, this is a poem of Hassan ibn Thabit, radiallahu anhu, and the point is this is bad poetry. So the point I'm just making here is that once Hassan recited this line, لَنَا الْجَفَنَاتَ الْغُرُّ يَلْمَعْنَ بِالضُّحَى وَأَسْيَافُنَا يَقْطَرْنَ مِنْ نَجْدَةٍ دَمَى. Okay, and he's talking about that we have these, the jafana, and there's different interpretations of what it is. Some say it's the date palm tree, some say it's the pots that you use to host the guests. But he's saying we have these incredible pots of cooking that shine in the morning, meaning that when the guests come, our pots are ready to cook, because hospitality is seen as this incredible virtue among the Arabs. It's one of their primary virtues. And he says, but when it comes to war, وَأَسْيَافُنَا يَقْطَرْنَ مِنْ نَجْدَةٍ دَمَى, when the time of war comes, our swords are flowing with blood. Okay, and he recites this poetry, لَنَا الْجَفَنَاتَ الْغُرُّ يَلْمَعْنَ بِالضُّحَى, that our pots are gleaming. Ghurr means white. These are shining pots are gleaming in the morning, and our swords are dripping with blood when it comes to the moments of war. MashaAllah. Okay, Maghrib time here in Melbourne. What does that? Okay, so that means you have to go and pray Maghrib. That's fine. So this is recorded, so people can access the recording afterwards as well. So this is what Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu is saying. I'm just going to switch just so I can annotate this. And that's another thing we're going to be doing, a lot of annotations of things, okay? And I'll just turn my camera off so you don't see my ceiling. Okay. Okay, so he says, Lana al-Jafana. He recites this poem to Nabigha, who's one of the pre-Islamic poets. And some say he sees Islam, but Allah, I know whether he accepts Islam. And Nabigha literally says, this is bad poetry. He says, because Jafanat is the plural, but it's not a big plural. It's not, he's saying you should have said Ajfan. And he said Asyaf, but why not say Suyuf? Why have you lessened the amount of the pots? Why have you reduced the amount of swords? Why not more swords? Why not more pots? Right? And then he says, Yalma'na is to shine, but what about the spark and of lightning? Why not say Yabraqna from Barq, about lightning, yeah? So he's critiquing him. And then he says, you say it happened in the morning. Who has guests in the morning? Who comes to your house to eat breakfast? Nobody comes to your house to eat breakfast. Sorry, my screen suddenly decided to play up. Okay, he's saying, why not say duja? They come in the evening time when you're free and you have loads of time and you sit and you eat and you be merry with your friends and your family. That's the moment that you have friends. And he says, yaqtarna from qatra. What does a qatra mean in Urdu even? Do people know? It's a good little Arabic text. What does qatra mean? Drop. Yaqtarna or yaqturna. And he says, no, we don't want to say drops of blood. If you want to talk about blood, let's literally get this going. Let's make it as horrific as possible. And he says, sorry, one second. He says, not yaqturna or yaqtarna. It's okay, my pen, and here we go. He says, yajrina. What does yajrina mean? Flow. That's what he's saying. Look at that. You messed it all up. Increase the pots, increase the swords, let them gleam, spark, just explosion of light in the evening. In the evening when you can see the light, what's the point shining in the morning when the sun's already out? There's nothing to see. And he critiques the poetry of Hassan ibn Thabit, radiallahu anhu. But the point I'm just trying to make here is that the Arabs have this keen sense that word selection, you picked the wrong word, you picked the wrong verb, the order was wrong, you should have done it like this, you should have done it like that. So once you see, and the point really being made here is once you see how incredibly critical and analytic they are with the choice of language and the scheme and the word order, how about the fact that they had nothing to critique about the Book of Allah? They had nothing. In awe, Baqillani, Allah yarhamhu, says that when it came to the Book of Allah, Allah said, just bring 10 surahs, bring a surah, bring Surah Kawthar equivalent. And instead of bringing, all they had to do, bring one surah, just mobilize the forces, mobilize the poets, mobilize the orators, mobilize the rhetoricians, mobilize the linguists, write 1 3-verse surah that is equivalent to Surah Al-Kawthar. And instead, they gave blood, sweat, tear, money. They sacrificed everything in their power to fight Islam, but they didn't even go because that would have been easier. But they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. And that's the promise of the Book of Allah, that you'll never be able to do it. And this lesson, this subject that we're studying, is our attempt to flesh out what did it mean? What does it mean for the Quran to be miraculous? What does it mean? Right? What was it that when Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu just hears the opening verses of Taha, he knows this is Laysa hada kalam bashar. He knows this is not the word of human beings. This is cosmic. This is metaphysical speech. This is dal ala kalam nafsi for the mutakallimun in attendance. Yeah. So I'm just trying to, yeah, because they used to gather. What did they say? We're going to talk about, because it comes up in one of the lines, at the fair of Uqal, and they would recite their poetry and they would hang it on the Kaaba. And Labid from the Sahib Mu'allaqa, he has a Mu'allaqa from the 7 hanging odes that are hung on the Kaaba Sharifa. And if Allah gives us tawfiq, I don't think we'll have time this year, if people join this class, to look at the Mu'allaqat properly. But next year, maybe we'll read a Mu'allaqa together. Maybe we'll read Ka'b ibn Zuhair's Banat Su'ad, his poem in the praise of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has a Jahili poem in praise of the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam, literally in the style of Jahiliyyah, with the Nasib and all of the other things that the Jahili poems have at the beginning and things like this. And he's praising the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these poets all accept Islam. Labid accepts Islam. And when they came to him and said, Labid, write poetry, he said, how can I write poetry when Surah Baqarah exists? The Surah Baqarah suffices me in this instance. Labid, the pen of Labid is set. The pen of Labid will not rise again because the pen of God has spoken. And so this, what we're trying to do, this lesson will be an attempt, inshallah, to sort of flesh out what was so magnificent about the Quran. Because its primary miracle, without now belaboring the point, and I want to move on, is never any other miracle. It's, even though the ulama Khattabi and others mentioned, oh, it has prophecies and it has historical information about the past that the Arabs didn't know about, and then quote unquote something like cosmic realities, or God forbid we call them scientific miracles, because that's a horrible turn of phrase, but this idea that it points at cosmic realities, that's what we call them, cosmological, biological realities. These are all true, but that was not what it was sent for. When Jubayr ibn Mut'im radiallahu anhu says, I heard Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan, and I believed, it wasn't because it told him about, some sort of science or DNA. He was talking about DNA or bacteria or something. No, he believed because it was just the power of the language. It just moved his heart that he had no choice but to accept the religion of Al-Islam. And there were many people who heard and didn't accept. So, Allahu A'lam. Okay. And so this is just Muhyiddin Abdul Hamid is talking about the Quran is the great proof. And they knew that it wasn't it wasn't the sorcery, and it wasn't soothsaying and all of those other horrible things. Okay. Are we good to move on, inshallah? Just this is just for confirmation. I just asked for a yes. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Okay, so this is just a historical overview. If people are interested, there's a link actually that you can look at. I think his name is Suhail Laha. Oh, I should have capitalized that L. Forgive me. Suhail Laha. Laha. I don't know how you pronounce his name. He's come on Blogging Theology to talk about Mutawatir. That's his PhD thesis. But he has a very nice historical overview of Balagha in English. So if people want to read more about the development of the science, I'd recommend going onto his website, downloading his. He has this little paper. It's not long. You can read it in about 20 minutes or something, maybe less. But it's a nice little historical overview of the development of Balagha. Um, and so that's so we're not going to go into all of these people. Abu Ubaid Asma'i, Farrah, Bishop ibn al-Mu'taz. Bishop ibn al-Mu'taz is actually very important, but we won't go into Al-Jahid. People know the famous Mu'tazili. He has the book Al-Haywan. I think that's what it's called. And then we have this is we'll talk about this briefly, but it's just this is the moment that Sunni Islam takes rhetoric on and co-opts it and takes ownership of it. And so you have the two great Imams of the Ash'ari Creed, Imam Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, rahmatullahi alayhi, who has many writings on Kalam, and I think he's the student of Ibn Furak, or he's got some link to Ibn Furak. But he has this book, I'Jaz al-Quran, and they're actually going toe-to-toe with the Mu'tazilites in this instant. And I mentioned this last week's taster session too, but the Mu'tazilites had this concept called Sarfa. And Sarfa means, what do people think it means based off this idea of Sarf? Unless we have some budding Kalam students here. If anybody studies some Kalam, they can tell us. If people are Aqidah experts, any Aqidah experts know what Sarfa is? No? Okay, so it's sort of moving. So the Mu'tazilites, some of them, not all of them, claimed that the Arab inability to actually imitate the Quran was not because anything miraculous of the Quran itself. It was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not allow them to imitate the Quran. Does that make sense? So there was a sort of, the wording you have to be very careful with, but there's sort of an extrinsic intervention. There was an outside intervention from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that just meant that every time somebody tried to imitate the Quran, they were just made unable to do so. But it wasn't because the Quran had anything miraculous in and of itself. Okay? Does that make sense? Do people understand the point I'm making there? So the Mu'tazilites, some of them are claiming, so this is a heterodox creedal school saying that, oh, the Quran is not miraculous in and of itself. It's just that every time somebody tried to imitate it, the lights went off, or I don't know, like lightning struck them, or whatever. I'm being facetious, but you know what I mean, like something like that. So then, in response, then the Ash'ari said, which is the Sunni school of theology that I'm assuming, I'm hoping everybody here follows, but the majority of Muslims in the world follow the school of Ghazali, Razi, and others, and who's very key, who's going to be very critical moving forward, because these are the great mufassirun who are writing then on the I'jaz al-Quran are the Ash'aris. Less so the Maturidis, later the Maturidis, but in the initial stage of the Ash'aris do this. They say no, there is something in and of the Quran itself that makes it miraculous, and so they write these incredible books, Dalailul I'jaz, and alhamdulillah, I hear that Turath are close to publishing I'jaz al-Quran of Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, so everybody can look forward to that, inshallah. And so you have this development then of this response, right? No, it is miraculous. What makes it miraculous? The science we're going to study. Because Jurjani, and I'll just mention this, it's a history lesson, yeah, but we got to speed up soon anyways. But Jurjani is, they say, the founder of Balagha. He's the founder. And he builds Balagha literally as a science to defend the miraculous nature of the Quran. He literally just goes and says, here's why Imrul Qais's poetry was not good, and here's why the Quran is better. And so he is the development, he is the primary founder, they consider, of the science of what is called Balagha. Alhamdulillah. And if people are interested in like sort of reading on Quranic I'jaz, I recommend a good book. I don't know if people have, if you have Arabic, you can read it in Arabic. If you don't have Arabic, you can get it in English. And if you know me, you can borrow my copy. I have the English. It's I don't know. I don't know what it's called in English. It's the Eternal Challenge, maybe. But An-Naba, I'm just typing into the chat. This book, if people are interested in I'jaz al-Quran, the miraculous nature of the Quran, this for me is one of the great books of the last century. And it's not me saying this, the ulama say this. They say this was one of the most remarkable books written. And it's by Sheikh Abdullah Daraz, An-Naba al-Azim, it's called, yeah? Has that sent? Yeah. An-Naba al-Azim by Sheikh Abdullah Daraz, who was an Azhari scholar who went to France and studied at the Sorbonne. And then he writes this short book, which is defending the miraculous nature of the Quran. And he brings all the reasons why the Quran has to be the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And trust me, it's a phenomenal book, and you'll love reading it. You'll actually enjoy it so much. And Suhaib Sa'id, the Scottish Mufassir, who's a very gifted scholar, mashallah. He has lessons on it in English at the Azhar Mosque. You can find on YouTube. Uh, Abdullah Daraz. Abdullah Daraz. Okay, I'll type it in. I don't know. I'm assuming he's like Chechen or something originally. I don't know. Daraz does not. I don't. Druze, maybe. There's a group in Lebanon called the Druze. I don't know if there's a link to that. Abdullah Daraz. Rahimahullah ta'ala. Great. He has many books on so many sciences. And then we have, this is the culmination of Balagha. So we fast forwarded, we jumped in our time machine. We're like Back to the Future and that. Talkhis al-Ma'ani and Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani. Okay. And so where everybody's now just focused on like Taftazani. Taftazani is the final icing on the cake. And so everything that comes after Taftazani is now built on him. And then they have this idea of decline and stuff. We won't worry about that. Okay, let's look at some examples of Balagha from the Quran. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? If you do, let me know. Otherwise, we can carry on and look at some Quranic examples of balagha in action. And this is going to be your chance, inshallah, to sort of come in and give me some ideas on what you think is going on. Taftazani. No, Taftazani. In any science that's related to some sort of logical understanding or philosophy or logic or language or grammar. Taftazani, Allama Sa'duddin Mas'ud ibn Umar at-Taftazani rahmatullahi alayh. One of the great scholars, really was unanimously accepted as a giant of Islamic scholarship. Okay, I don't know if can I not hide this? Oh, I've got this. That's okay. So this is an example of balagha of the Quran. So we're going to look at some aspects of it. I've got 3 examples. We'll see how time goes, whether we'll have time to go through all of them. So everybody knows Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is sent to the Pharaoh. Okay, so everybody knows that Musa is sent to the Pharaoh. And what is the advice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives Musa alayhi salam before sending him to the Pharaoh? You hear it in loads of like speeches and wa'adh and nasiha, and people always do it when it comes to recommending people have good character. What's the advice that's given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam? Anybody? It's quite famous advice. No? Nobody? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, speak kindly, yes. فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Speak nicely, speak softly to him. Now, that's nice as advice, and people love quoting that verse. But Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah in the Tibyan, he says, we actually have in the Quran actually shows us how Musa alayhi salam spoke nicely to him. I love this example. So it says, Surah Nazi'at, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Pharaoh, surely he has transgressed. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Musa alayhi salam what to say to him. So this is the soft speech. And then Ibn Qayyim gives 7 ways in which the speech just embodies just humble advice. So I think this is a good example to start with in terms of rhetorical power of the Quran. So this is not like the Quran it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to Musa alayhi salam, telling him what to say to Fir'aun to indicate towards soft speech, right? So I'm wondering, what do you think? What are, if you look at these verses, فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّى وَأَهْدِيَكَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَتَخْشَى. Now, I don't know if does anybody have Mustafa Khattab? If I could ask somebody as a favor, if you could open Mustafa Khattab's Quran translation. If you can open Mustafa Khattab's Quran translation and just tell me, if somebody could read for me what he's translated these verses as. I need nominees. Although I have to pick on somebody. So if you go to Mustafa Khattab, if you go to like Quran.com, Mustafa Khattab Quran translation, can anybody just read to me his translation of verse 17 to 19 of Surah Nazi'at? Anybody? Uh, uh, just turn your mic on and give it a go. There's going to have to be some sort of engagement from you guys at some point, right?
Sorry, could you tell me which
Bismillah.
verses, Linda?
Okay, I can't hear you for some reason. I don't know if that's me. Can everybody else hear? Okay, sorry. Would you mind repeating yourself? My sound was messed up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Off you go.
Okay. And you said Mustafa Khattab?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm opening it. Okay. And so the first ayah, فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّى, it says, and say to him, would you like to purify yourself?
Okay, and the next verse?
وَأَهْدِيَكَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَتَخْشَى, and that I should guide you to your Lord so that you fear him.
Perfect. Well done. Thank you so much. Okay, now I need from you, class, what in these two verses indicates, what sort of stands out to you as a form of softness in advice? All right. So you've got هل لك إلى أن تزكى وأهديك إلى ربك فتخشى. Why would Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah pick this as an example? 7 examples he gives of where the advice is being given here. Very good. That's the first thing he says. Look at this. It's instead of the hal is an arad. He's just offering. It's an offer being made, right? He's not saying, "Oh, obey, listen, you better do this, otherwise, wrath and fury of God be known," or whatever else. No, he's saying, would you mind? Would you mind? Would you consider? Have you ever thought about? I have an option. I want to present to you. In spite of all the transgression you've done, I'm going to ask you nicely. Hal. Very good. Okay, this is double Ibn Qayyim mentions, yeah? Is this. Laka and tazakka. At no point does Musa alayhi salam say to him, he doesn't make it about himself. Because he knows the Pharaoh is this arrogant man. The Pharaoh is so self-centered. He's so narcissistic. He wants everybody to worship him. In one place, actually, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the people of Pharaoh Qawm Fir'aun. It's actually listing all the prophets, and he's saying the people of Moses and Noah, or the people of Noah, and then he says, and Fir'aun. And they say, well, why Fir'aun? And they say, because there was no way to disassociate his people from him. That's how central he was. He was the state. He was the people. He was society. That's how arrogant and self-centered he was, that he became so deeply associated with his people that there was no way that his people were Pharaoh's people. His people were him. And so when Musa alayhi salam's talking to him now, he's saying, I'll make it about you. Let me turn the table slightly. Do you want? You. It's you. I'm not doing anything. It's you. You make the choice. It's in your hands. You're the man. You're in charge. You get to decide. Ila an tazakka. To be purified. You will be purified. You're going to do it. It's you doing. Nobody else is. Nah, I got nothing. I'm just here. What am I here to do? What am I here to do? What is he here to do? Because that's the next point Ibn Qayyim mentions. What's the next point? Musa alayhi salam tells us his role in this discourse. What's the role of Moses in the discourse? What's the role of Moses in the process? It's the next verse. He says it straight away. What's Musa alayhi salam saying about himself? He's made it all about Fir'aun in this conversation. It's you. You're doing this. You need to do this to yourself. Help me, help you. Like one of my teachers in Hifz used to say, help me, help you, by waking up after Fajr and reciting Quran. But what's Musa alayhi salam's role in this? By his own admission. That's it. Musa alayhi salam restricts himself. He says, I'm just a guide. I'm the guide. I'm just the middleman. I'm not important here. I'm not the main character. You know, some people say, you know, that you have main character syndrome. It has to be about me. I'm the main character in the story of life. No, you're not. Musa alayhi salam saying, "Wahdiyaka, I'll guide you." And he's saying in a way that, you know, I'm going to take, it's like, and Sayyidina Imam Ibn Qayyim, Allah yarhamhu, says, it's like he's saying, I'll take you to a treasure. I'm just taking you to the treasure's yours. It's all yours to take what you want. Do you understand? Do you get it? Like, I'm just the guide. And a hadi, and al hadi faqat. That's my job. I'll guide you to what's best for you, but you're going to do the rest. And then the final point, is there anything else that sort of points to just lovely advice? I think there's one more example Ibn Qayyim gives that really narrows in on this notion of softness in advice. Only outcome for him? Who's he inviting him to? Who's he being invited to? Allah. But he doesn't call him Allah, does he? What does he call him? Because that makes a difference. Your Lord. He's awakening a memory, deeply uh, hidden away, absolutely drowning. So your Lord, come to your Lord. Murabbi, he nurtured you, he cared for you, he preserved you, he protected you, he gave you kingdom, he gave you power, he gave you everything. Come to your Lord. Well, I'm just guiding you to your Lord. I'm not going to take you. You just go there. I'll take you there to the door. I'll walk away. You walk in. You walk in yourself with your own legs to your Lord. Do you see? I don't know. I found this. When I read this, I was just blown away. Wallahi. Like, I read these verses all the time. Okay, not all the time. I should read them more, but I read these verses. Never before had I sat and thought, what is the qawl layyina? Because all the, you know, I don't know, Mufti Manquaid was standing there going, qawl layyina. He told him to speak with soft speech. And then I was like, what's the speech? And this is the speech. This is how you do soft speech in action. Do you get me? And he probably said in Hebrew or whatever, or whatever language people spoke in Egypt at that time. But the Quran is transferring over the meanings in such an incredible way to showcase us how Musa alayhi salam presented. I don't know. I found this remarkable. What do people think? Which surah? This is Surah Nazi'at. Surah Nazi'at. Juz Amma, second surah. I wish my Quran was that strong with all other 30 juz of the Quran. Alhamdulillah. Okay, shall we do another example? People ready for another example? Everybody with me? Good. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, I've got two more examples. Yeah, one's from Surah Mulk, one's from Wal Asr, Innal Insana Lafi Khusr. We may do all three examples, and then we'll just do a brief reading of the opening of the text. Okay, let's start with. I had a look at Razi, Tafsir Razi this morning as well, just to make sure I wasn't making stuff up. But Wal Asr, it starts with an oath. The oath is being made by Asr. What's Asr in this instance? Time. But we already have now to focus in slightly, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said there's so many words for time. Wal waqt, wal dahr. It's a very specific moment of time. It's I don't know, do they call it dusk? Is it called dusk? I'm gonna say late afternoon, yeah, but I feel like it's called dusk in proper English. If anybody knows what it's called in proper English, give me a shout, inshallah. It's the late afternoon time. And so what is Allah swearing by? He's either swearing by the Asr prayer, which out of all the prayers is the central prayer, it's the middle prayer, it's the pillar prayer, it's the core prayer, it's the prayer that holds all the other prayers together. Salatul Wusta, as it's called in the Kitab of Allah. Or Wal Asr is talking about the late afternoon, the passing of time. Why do you think that dusk just before the coming of Maghrib? Why would you focus in on that? By the way, you're thinking, where's the rhetoric and the grammar? The grammar's there. Because what's the right? Is it about all time? Is it al-ahdi, talking about a specific moment in time? That's the rhetoric. Yeah, you're not seeing it yet. You'll see it as the concepts are not, but I'm trying to just flesh them out a little bit. Definiteness. Okay, so it's talking about a specific moment in time. Why the dusk? Why talk to the Prophet ﷺ and the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ about dusk, about this, literally this moment that comes just before the coming of Maghrib, the Asr time, between the end of daylight? What's the indication being given here in terms of end of daylight? If somebody wants to turn on their mic, I'm more than happy, inshallah. I feel like I'll be talking too much. I've got a little sore throat as well. What does it mean? The beginning of the next day. That's good, isn't it? But that the beginning of the next day, you do the beginning of the next day. Is that? Yes, I love this. Anybody got any more? End of daylight is good, but why end of daylight? See, that I get that it's the end of the day, but why the end of the day? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrowing in? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, very good. There's two ideas here. And this is a point to remember. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes an oath, it's not always, people get really fixated on what the Jawab al-Qasam is. What is the point that he's trying to make at the end of the oath? Sometimes the oath itself has so much to tell us, right? It's the oath itself. Okay, so it's the middle of the day in a sense, but in a real sense, because for the Arabs, as soon as it gets dark, is khalas, game over. There's no light switch, put the light on. There's no Wi-Fi. There's nothing. That's why you wake up when the light's out and you go to sleep when the light's gone. So for them, it's the disappearance of the light, and it can mean either two things. Because the surah, really what it's about is the significance of time as a reality. And when do you realize that time is so important to you? Is when it's gone. And so the surah is saying to the believers, just every single human being is saying there's not much time left. It doesn't matter how long you've lived on the earth. It doesn't matter how long you've lived on the earth. You have what, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. You have no time left. Live every day as if you only have 10 minutes to go. Imam al-Haddad says from his advice, live every day as if it's tomorrow. He says, literally sit down sometimes, think about what's happening. Think about if somebody came to you and said, I guarantee you're going to die tomorrow. What means? What's meaningful to you then? What's important to you then? Let that be important to you now. And it's talking about the disappearance of time. Sorry. Or it's talking about something else. How would you relate this to the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ as a totality, right? So I'm not talking about individual members. I'm talking about the idea of the ummah, the nation that is under the tutelage and guidance of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How does this asr relate to them? We've been given short lives. We do generally have shorter lives than the other ummahs. I didn't even think about this. This is a very, very good point. Anything else? There's one point I'm looking for because the ulama mention it. No. Think about, okay, Sister Yumna makes a good point. Relation to the other ummahs. How is the Asr time significant for the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ in relation to what the ummahs that came previously? Very good. Sister, I'm going to mispronounce this. I think it's Fadila. The last ummah. We are the ummah of the Asr time. We haven't even got to the next verse, man. I'm saying, like when you catch the meanings, it's really, the Quran is never the same. It's never the same. You're the ummah of Ummah Akhir Zaman, the ummah of the end times. You're the Asr ummah. You're the ummah before night. You're the ummah before darkness. You're the ummah as the light begins to disappear. Look how many lessons are there in that. Just heed that. There's a narration of the Messenger of God where he talks about this, about the previous nations. That what do you say about a nation that came and it woke up in the morning from Fajr to Dhuhr and it worked and it plowed the field and did whatever it did and then it had to leave. And then another nation came between the Dhuhr and Asr and it plowed the field and it did what it could do and then it left. And then he said, then a nation came. And at the end of the day, there wasn't much time left. They came between the Asr and the Maghrib and they worked. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them much more than was given to the nations that came before in terms of the reward. And then they complained and said, how? They come for such a short amount of time. How can you give them more than us? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. This is the bounty of Allah. He gives it to whoever He wants. Right, last ummah, the ummah of Maghrib. MashaAllah. Okay. Sister Maryam is saying that another possible explanation is that it could be by the unstoppable fate. So he's talking about the qadr and the idea that everybody's death is decreed. Allahu A'lam. Yeah, these are all different options. And if you look in the books of tafasir, you'll see the ulama sort of wrangle with each other over what the possible meanings could be. Okay. Innal insana lafi khusr. Right now, the promise, you have a qasam, And built off of the qasam is always what's called the jawab al-qasam. So what is the result of the promise that's being made here, right? So next it comes in and says, indeed, Sister Yumna, you with me? Do you want to read out Surah Asr, the second verse, the translation?
إن الإنسان لفي خسر. Surely humanity is in grave loss.
Thank you so much. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay. There are multiple, and because we're going to do this in Durus al-Balagha, because he talks about levels of emphasis. There are multiple tools of emphasis here. And I think the gift that you'll get from this lesson moving forward is a lot of the time I have students, right? I teach Arabic to other students, and every time I say to them, "Oh, why is that there?" They'll say emphasis. I know, well, that's like, it's like, I don't know if people have heard of like God of the gaps. It's like emphasis of the gaps. Everything's just emphasis. That's not true. Give me the specific mode of emphasis that's being done here. So what do you think? If you had to now, let's see, chat, or if people want to speak, let me know. Put your hand up and I can just give you the mic. What in the second verse are the tools of emphasis to really drive this point home about how less time man has, how desperate and fragile his situation is? Let's see what you've got, people. MashaAllah alayk. Inna and la for emphasis, okay? So somebody's mentioned inna, okay? Indeed, surely, the la. They're all emphasizing different points, okay? So the inna is emphasizing the whole sentence. The la is emphasizing a very specific area of the sentence. Al, very good. Al, this al here. Now, what does the al mean? We're going to have to look at that. Okay, somebody said the tanween on khusr, because the indefinite nature of this. It is elaborating, so this is good. So Sister Yumna sort of she's giving tanasub, what the ulama call tanasub, which is how the verses link to each other. Because sometimes when you do like grammatical, when you do like linguistic analysis, people just say that word, that word, that word, but they miss the structure as a totality. That's a good point. The verse as a totality is a tafsir of the verse that precedes it, and that's like Biqa'i, his whole tafsir. My teacher Sheikh Suleiman doesn't always agree with this. He says that actually Biqai's got more to offer than coherence in verses, but that's an integral part of his tafsir for sure. What else? So we got that the tanween on khusr, it can come for a variety of different reasons. Again, it's in the durus al-balagha. It could mean tahqir. It means the loss is so less, but here it doesn't mean less. It's not saying how insignificant the loss is. It's talking about the magnificence of the loss, how vast the loss is that's being experienced in this instance. Anything else? There's at least two more points I can think of. Actually, maybe three. I think the indefiniteness of the khusr, because khusr, it doesn't mean a specific type of loss. It doesn't say al-khus, the loss. It's saying all imaginable ideas of loss that you could possibly conceive of in your mind. Man is embroiled in every single one of them, right? And this is where you start thinking, because what does the khusr mean? It's that you have no time. You wasted so much time. You didn't spend the time with your family. You wasted your children's time. You wasted other people's time. You went astray in that time. You didn't understand the importance of the time. You don't even know the creator of time himself. The levels of loss are so significant. The hierarchy itself, if you look at it and consider it, it will just blow your mind. Okay. Okay, let's just focus on words. There's two words we haven't. Okay. What about the fee? What do you think the significance of the fee is? Insan from Nasir. Okay, I'll give you that. Okay, I'll give you both that. Insan, one of the derivations, by the way, this is not agreed on. The ulama have about 5, 6 different opinions. They say uns, it could come from companionship because humans are social creatures. But one of the meanings, some of the ulama, this is a weak opinion, by the way, from what I read, that it comes from Nasir Nisyan. The mankind by nature is a forgetful being. I prefer the idea that mankind by nature is a social being. But yes, okay, so there's an idea of the forgetfulness of man is being used. It doesn't say innal bashar. It doesn't say inna bana Adam or something. It says sorry, inna bani Adam. It says specifically that it's man, nisyan, forgetfulness. Yes, the fee is an indicator of drowning, to be surrounded by, to not be able to escape. And everywhere you look, all you see is loss, whether you see it or not. There's still one more. One more. What about the sentence? What kind of sentence is this? Ah, very good. The al on al-insan, istighraq. every single human being. Either it's istighraq, meaning every single human being is in a state of loss, so nobody escapes the fate, or it's genus, that mankind by his nature, the genus of human being is by definition one. To define a human being is to define some form of loss. I don't know if people understand the difference between that. So one is saying individually every single human being is in loss in whatever way they are. Another one is saying no, human beings as a category is a loser category. And that's a point that comes up in Durus al-Balagha that we can look at when it comes up, okay? So I like this. So all, but it could either be category or it could be all individuals. Okay, one more. The doubling of kasra tanween, yes, that's very important. Innal insana lafi khusr. So it comes to the awesome nature of the loss itself, okay? How significant the loss is, and then how also varied the loss is, because it's nakira, which means that it's talking about multiple forms of loss. Last thing, the sentence. What kind of sentence is this? You have two sentences in Arabic. What two sentences do you have in Arabic? At a base level, there's only two sentences in Arabic. And if you learn those sentences, you've learned all Arabic sentences. فعلية or اسمية. Is this a jumla فعلية or is it a jumla اسمية? Okay, what's the significance of it being a jumla اسمية then? What is the difference between saying man is drowning in loss, man has drowned in loss, man will drown in loss, then saying man continuous? Okay, come on, more words. This again, Durus al-Balagha, second lesson, it will be there. Not linked to time. It's a timeless reality. It's a timeless truth. It's a stable truth. It's a robust truth. It's a static truth. It's an unchangeable truth. Permanent truth. Love that word. Permanent. It's a permanent state of affairs. Yeah, ithbat, thubut. It's so fixed, so categorically intertwined with the nature of who man is that there's no escaping it now, before, or ever after. That's just right. Then what do they say? That when the Sahaba would meet up, they wouldn't leave each other except they would recite Surah Asr. Do you see why? We haven't even gone to illa alladina. There's a whole significance of the illa. Ibn Ashur talks about the significance of illa as a word. We don't need to. Ibn Ashur, from the great Mufassirin, right? Have people heard of Tahir ibn Ashur? Have people heard the name Ibn Ashur before? Nobody? Tahir ibn Ashur, Tunisian, passed away in 73, I think. He writes, arguably, the scholars say after the great tafsirs of the great classical tafsirs, this is now one of the great tafsirs. He wrote it in the 20th century. And the ulama just sat there saying it's up there with the Razis and the Alusis and the Biqa'is and everybody. At-Tahrir wa Tanweer. He has a book on Balagha as well, called Mujaz al-Balagha. I considered teaching that instead of Durus, but I decided to go with Durus instead because he has more commentaries and it's easier to access for resources. Shall we do another verse or shall we start the text? What are people saying? I'm happy either way because we're going to start the text next week either way, if not this week. But I have one more potential example that we can go into. What do you think? What do you think? I'll do it. Democracy, people. I'm not a believer in democracy, but I'll be democratic for now. Verse, we want to do another verse. Okay. But remember, we got, okay, let me see. Okay. Let's see okay. Yeah, I'll just do it as an intro to, and then maybe we'll read a beginning section of the text for Barakah, and then we'll call it a day, and I'll take any questions and stuff people want to ask, okay? So whether you take this course or not, I'll take any questions you want on the science of Balagha and things, but my hope is you'll sign up, inshallah ta'ala, to the course, and then we go on an incredible journey together, just trying to open up the miracles of the Book of Allah. So let's do another verse. This is full verse. I was going to ask what surah is it in, and then I looked at the top and it's got it written there, so I sort of given it away. Verse of Surah Al-Mulk. If I can ask our resident Quran translator, Sister Yumna, would you be able to translate for me verse 19 of Surah Al-Mulk for everybody listening?
Have they not looked to the birds above them spreading their wings, and at times they fold them in? No one holds them up except the Rahman, the All-Merciful Allah. Surely He is watchful of everything.
is watchful about. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Let's just point out a few things on this one. We'll start off with the Hamza. What kind of Hamza is this, people? Where are my grammarians? What kind of Hamza is this? Hamza istifham. I've never seen people move so fast. MashaAllah. Istifham. What kind of istifham is this? It's a question, right? There's a question being asked. Is it a rhetorical question? It's a harf istifham. What's he asking them? What's the point? The question. Inkari. Very good. Sister Zahra, would you mind letting me know what previous studies in Arabic you may have done? I did not expect that. That was good. That's like a bouncer from like Wasim Akram or something. That came out of nowhere. It's actually Hamza istifham inkari. It creates the effect of denial. That's the effect. This is the idea of denial. It's denying the fact that they've seen. Why would the Quran deny the fact that they've seen? They have seen. Do you think the Arabs didn't have birds? They had birds. You don't think they saw birds? They saw birds. But what's the Quran saying? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala denying the seeing of birds? أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا, do they not see the birds? Have they not seen the birds? Of course they've seen birds. They have birds. I've been to, we've all been to Umrah. They got birds. They got too many birds, too many pigeons. In Mecca, I know a lot of people are feeding them and that. That's it, Sister Yumna, mashallah. They haven't truly seen. When was the last time you truly looked? Have you even really looked at the bird? If you looked at the bird, how could you deny Allah? That's what it's saying. All of these attempts to look, you didn't look properly. And that's why this surah, if you read Surah Mulk, there's a lot of this idea of look again, look once more, look with foresight, look with understanding, look with knowledge, look to see Allah. Stop looking at what's there, the material reality, look at the metaphysical foundations of that reality. Okay, even though they have looked. Have they not seen ila at-tayr, ila Ibn Ashur mentions comes to show that this is a looking, okay? Because sometimes yara means to know. Have they not known the birds? No. He's literally saying, look. Have you not seen the birds with the eye inside, the inner eye? Yeah, all the Sufis in attendance. What's the significance of fawqahum? It's above them. But what does it mean to be above? Why mention this point about above them? Because we all know birds are above them. They're not going to fly underneath us. They're not going to fly side by side with us. They're going to fly above us. But what is the point? Define gravity, high statured, free. Okay. For some scientists in attendance. Make it significant for the Arabs. Okay, so this is a point in tafsir, especially with balagha. You have to look from the Arab lens, because that's make this a point, and I'm not trying to bash anybody, but just say, like, a lot of the problem comes is when you try to read the Quran as like the 21st century weird people that we are. When I say weird, it's an actual category: Western, educated, industrialized, something. It's an actual psychological category. That's not the Arabs are not. They're not us, so they don't see things as we see them. What do you think the balagha point is here? Fawqahum, maybe the idea that they're above and something's holding them up. The Quran will say, okay, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It comes to see, Sheikh Ali Hani and others mentioned, it comes to say they're not far from you. All you have to do is just look up. They're just above. Fawqahum actually means there's like an immediate aboveness, right? It's not this. It's still minimizing the distance between them. Whereas when it might talk about other things, these are very far. The clouds, the angels, these cosmic realities are very separate from them, right? Whereas for the birds, it's not even there. It's like they walk among you, even though they don't. But all you have to do is just look up, right? You look at the birds are there. So why did you never just look up? Do you see? I don't know. Allah Alam. It's a miracle of the Quran. Then it talks about the safat. Okay, this comes from this idea of saf, the straightedness. Okay, that their wings are straight and then crooked. And crooked is a bad thing, but it's sort of I don't know what the right word is. I think some people might have an idea where this part's going, because this is quite famous one. Many ulama give example of this one. Okay, and Razi actually mentions this in his tafsir. In Safat, what kind of word is this? What kind of word is Safat? Is it a noun or a verb? From Saf, ism fa'il. Saf. Okay, I might have just given it away actually. What kind of word is Saf? It's a noun. Okay, good. So when it comes to spreading their wings, the straightness of their wings, it uses a noun. When it comes to bending their wings, what is it? Yaqbidna. Is it a verb or a noun? Okay, stay with me. What kind of verb is it? Because the kind of verb makes a difference too. Command verb is different from any mudari. Okay, so it's a present future tense verb. What is the significance of the fact that the spread of the wings is brought as a noun based on, I think Brother Abu Muhammad, I think gave a beautiful, he talked about the significance of I'm not going to say it because it's you can go back in the chat to look at, because we already looked at the significance of the noun-based structure. What is the significance of bringing the spreading of the wings as a noun and then bringing the actual bending of the wings and the flapping as a mudari' verb, not just any verb, occurs actively? Oh God, we could more than 2 words. Tense and fi'l. Yeah. Give me a sentence. Give me a sentence. Imagine like you had your English professor with a sat behind you or something, and he said, "Write me a couple of sentences explaining this." Ongoing action. Oh yeah. Okay. By the way, when we get to the text, you're gonna be asked to read the text, inshallah. So I would recommend people get used to turning their mics on and stuff. Even though today's lesson is more introductory. Safatin wa yaqbidun is true. The noun is when they spread their wings, they hold them still. There's a stillness. But when it comes to flapping their wings, it's an ongoing action, it's continuity. And that's the distinction the Quran is making. Oops. Okay, it's not letting me write. Okay, continuity. I've sort of run out of space. Okay. Is this making sense? So people got that. This is a beautiful point. Many of the ulama mentioned this as an example of the miraculous nature. It's just descriptive. It's so descriptive. It brings it to life in front of you. The spread of the wings as they flow through the sky, and then suddenly they're wings, and then they're flapping them. And so with the verb, you see the movement happen. And with the noun, you see the stability of them just sort of gracefully flowing across the sky. Well, alhamdulillah, subhanallah. Okay. And then he says, Ma yumsikuhunna. Nothing holds them aloft. Now, this is the point about the power of God, right? This is what it's saying, is that if you really look at them, and this is what Ibn Ashur says, and I'll mention this point because I find it so significant and so powerful. He says, Ibn Ashur says, you should look at the birds as if you've never seen a bird before. You should look at birds as if you've never seen a bird before. He says, be like the man who's never seen an ocean and he sees the ocean for the first time and he'll just be in a state of complete ta'ajjub. That what is this thing? And how did it get here? And who made this? And because we've become so assimilated to natural realities, we don't see the fact that everything in existence is a miracle. Everything. So that's why the Quran says, look at the birds as if you've never seen them. You've never seen them. Look at them now. As if you don't even know what a bird is. You've been living in a cave your whole life. Now look. And you're just in a state of awe. And then it's flowing. And then it's flapping its wings. And somehow it's flying. And how can a being fly? How does that work? And then you realize, Ma yumsikuhunna, nothing holds them aloft except Ar-Rahman. What is the significance of bringing the name of Ar-Rahman in this instance? Because every name has a significance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why Ar-Rahman? Again, if people want to turn on their mics, I'm more than welcome. Oral interaction. The extensive nature of His mercy, that's the point. That all of this, everything that you can consider that exists in the universe, in terms of every single one of its real miracles, is a manifestation of divine mercy. Everything is from divine mercy. And so the birds themselves, their flying is all an extension of the divine mercy. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings this verse to an end by saying, Innahu bikulli shay'in basir. Okay, now here, I don't know if people catch this. The sentence is okay, because you have to be careful how you talk about the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sentence is wrong. Okay, so just bear with me. The sentence is wrong. Inna, who's ready to do some tadkeeb with me? You guys ready for some tadkeeb, yeah? Grammatical analysis? We good for some grammatical analysis? It's not going to scare people away? Nobody's replying. Sure. Okay, let's do this.
Inshallah.
Inna. G, what'd you say?
I said inshallah, it'll be okay with the tarkib.
Okay, let's go. So inna is what?
Inna is a harf ta'keed.
Harf ta'keed. This is true, but what is its
Well, that's-
grammatical structure? Very good. Harf mushabba bil fi'l, okay? And God forbid I write the whole word out, so I always write harf mushabba bil fi'l, okay? HMF. Okay, what is the ism of inna?
Zamir muttasil.
This is the meaning, okay? So this is the ism. What is the khabar of inna?
Basirun.
And then what is going on here? You have inna, harf mushabba bil fi'l, you have its ism, but the khabar is at the end of the sentence, even though it should be the next thing. There's an interlude, there's an intervention, there's a slight interruption that happens right in the middle of the verse. What is the significance? Because again, by the way, in Arabic, in one of the later sections of Al-Ma'ani, in Durus al-Balagh, he talks about this, what they call al-hasr or al-qasr. And they say from the hasr and the qasr is what's called taqdeem and ta'khir. I'm just using the technical terms to try to encourage you to come and try and learn them. It's a jar majroor, but don't jar majroors normally come at the end of a sentence? What is it? What is the difference between saying innahu basirun bi kulli shay and saying innahu bi kulli shay'in basir? What is the significant change that happens by bringing bi kulli shay early on rather than bringing it over here at the end? I should change colors really. Do people understand the question?
It gives more significance to whatever is coming before.
Okay, that's fine, but that's significance and emphasis are empty terms. I need what is the exact emphasis and significance that's being brought here. Right? So there is extra significance, there is more emphasis being brought on what's preceded, but why? What is the nature of this significance? What is the nature of this emphasis? So if we sort of explore the term emphasis further, anticipation, very good. Sister Zahra hit it on the nail, on the head. It's this idea that everything in existence, the primacy here is being focused on all existence is within the basira of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? There's nothing that escapes the divine gaze. And basir, by the way, from the names of Allah is more significant than any other name. In terms of, it's not He knows, basira is to know deeply. It's not just that He knows the general details of what goes on in the universe. No, every single intricate, intimate detail, He has basira. And then the basira is also, it's a sifa mushabbaha. I can't, we don't have time. Otherwise, we're going to spend too much time on this. But the significance is that He knows so deeply. As an internal, intimate characteristic of Him is that He knows. And He knows in a deep sense. But what does He know with a deep sense? Everything in existence is known by Him in a deep sense. And the emphasis here is on the bikulli shay. That all things are known by Him. Not that He knows all things. And it's a jumla ismiya. Are people catching that? It's a jumla ismiya. It's not saying He saw, He will see, He sees, He's timeless. He sees outside of time. We are just a reality that He witnesses in a totalizing way. Does that make sense? There's more to emphasize, there's more to pick up on this, but otherwise we'll be here all night and all day. And as you guys know, we have limited time. Okay? These are my 3 examples, and we have like 10 minutes left. So I'm going to quickly fly through. Very good. Very good. I didn't even think of that. I assume so. Very good. Yaro is just to see. Okay? Whereas another is more of a glimpse. Yara is to see, but it's to see at a surface level. And the Quran saying they haven't even looked properly. But then Basir is somebody who sees deeply. This is a very beautiful point, and it's a very good point. Okay. Very quickly, some people. Anybody recognize anybody here? Because we were just talking about the evolution of the miracle of the Quran. Anybody recognize anybody? One person here? Nobody? That's fine. So on the right-hand side, we have Sayyid Qutb, al-Shaheed, rahmatullahi alayh. And people might think, well, he's a political figure. Why have you got him in a lesson on the miracle of the Quran and Balagha? Sayyid Qutb, before anything, was one of the great masters of Arabic literature. And he wrote books on Balaghatul Quran. and he wrote a tafsir. And whatever people say about him and his tafsir, في ظلال القرآن is one of the great tafasir, because he took us the understanding of Arabic literature in a modern sense and used it to understand the kitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so now there is no denying that there is no way to speak about tafsir without at least referencing the dhilal. And one of the things that's remarkable about Sayyid Qutb's analysis, he does this thing, he took it from his teacher Mustafa Sadiq Rafi'i. I don't know if I have any Egyptians in the house. This idea was called, they call it I'jazul Musiqi. Yeah, I don't want people, because some people get really offended by this stuff and they say, oh, this is bid'ah and whatnot. But it's what's called the musical miracle of the Quran, the phonetic miracle of the Quran. The fact that the Quran, even by its sounds, you can hear the meanings it wishes to intend to you. That when it talks about Jahannam, it uses hard words with thiqal. Even the word thiqal in Arabic, heaviness, is a heavy word. Whereas the word for softness, khiffa, is a soft word. Do you see? So Sayyid Qutb, remarkable mufassir. On the top left is Dr. Fadil Saleh Sam'ur Ra'i. If you have Arabic, you should read his books. He's really revived this idea of the linguistic miracle of the Quran. And he was a primary influence for a man many of you are probably aware of, called Nu'man Ali Khan, who did a great khidmah to this Quran, I have to say. Whatever people say about him, in terms of actually reviving this attempt to understand the Quran from its miraculous nature, you have to give Nu'man Ali Khan his props. And then from the great Mufassirin, whose book we'll be looking at a lot when we look at Quran, is Muhammad Tahir ibn Ashur, rahmatullahi alayh. Some say the Mujaddid, one of the Mujaddideen of the last century, passed away in 73, Tunisian scholar, the Grand Mufti of Tunisia, a great Maliki Sheikh, Mufassir, fiqh scholar, wrote on politics, wrote on everything. But he has a 30-volume tafsir of Quran called At-Tahrir wa Tanweer. And for those of you who have Arabic, he has a short, standalone juz or tafsir of Juz Amma. Just Juz Amma, very simple tafsir with some of the linguistic miracles. You can buy that. I can see my copy on my shelf right now. So that's something to look into getting. I don't know if there's a PDF. If I find a PDF, I'll put it onto the Canvas chat. Just quickly, the benefits of learning rhetoric, which is what we're going to be doing for next week, inshallah. All sciences in Islam rely on rhetoric, and that I can't even emphasize. You'll see this if you've studied usul al-fiqh, if you've studied logic, if you've studied anything, you'll see. And then obviously Sakaki, I think it's Sakaki of Khattabi, says, how can a man consider himself to be an interpreter of the Quran and he has no understanding of balagha? Let him then stand away from the Quran. That this is a gross disservice to the book of Allah. You have to know the balagha of the Quran to understand the Quran. You can't translate the book of Allah except you understand the nuances of its meanings. Which is why, have people heard of the Quran Beheld? The new Quran translation by Sheikh Nuham Imkala? No? Maybe I live in a bubble somewhere. I know. Yes, okay. So this was an attempt. Sheikh Nuham Imkala, if people are interested, and I'll tell you that the problem with his translation of the Quran is that you don't catch the meanings unless you already know some balagha. It's called the Quran Beheld. I have a copy. It's a beautiful translation. If you listened or read a good tafsir of Quran from a linguistic lens and then read this English translation, it will blow your mind at how beautiful the translation is. With Sheikh Ali Hani al-Aqrabawi. If you know Sheikh Ali Hani, go listen to his durus online. Remarkable scholar. Remarkable. He's the teacher of one of my teachers who I studied Durus al-Balagha with, Sheikh Suleiman Vanel. I studied the majority, significant portions of Durus al-Balagha with him. But Sheikh Ali Hani al-Aqrabawi, magnificent scholar of Quran. You will get an understanding of the miraculous nature of the Quran, and hopefully you'll perfect and beautify one's own speech. And I've got Churchill, so I don't know if people heard this. Right at the beginning I mentioned, go on YouTube after this class and look up Winston Churchill, Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson has a 5-minute speech where he lays out rhetoric and how Winston Churchill used to use rhetoric in his speeches. Like we just did, all of this idea of analysis, linguistic analysis. Winston Churchill, they say, used to sit and write his speeches and practice them in front of the mirror before he used to give them, because they knew the power of rhetoric and the power of language and what it can do for their political benefit, of course, because God forbid they have any sort of cosmic sense of justice in their hearts. This is very briefly, but I mentioned this at the beginning. You will need to know some sarf, you will need to know your nahwa, you will need to know some idea of lugha. You have to be able to translate, inshallah ta'ala. So I won't dwell on this too much. Just to give us in a sense of actually starting a lesson, the 3 aspects of balagha that we'll be looking at as this lessons go forth is what's called ilmul ma'ani, which is scheme. This is what they call it in sort of modern Aristotelian rhetoric. they would call it, scheme of the language. So this is sentence structures. So this is stuff like jumla ismiya, jumla fi'liya. It's bringing things first, bringing things second. What kind of verb did you bring? What kind of noun did you bring? What kind of whatever? That analysis is called al-ma'ani. This makes up the majority of the study of balagha in a chronological sense, in the sense of how much time it takes. Though many ulama will argue that it's not the core of balagha, it's the next science that's the core of balagha. I disagree. I think ma'ani, some ulama say the balagha, ma'ani is the basis, but this is the idea of looking at sentences. It's a sort of more bird's eye view, more holistic attempt to understand the sentences as a totality and how they have a significance in understanding the words that are coming across. The second thing is what's called ilmul bayan. Okay, it's very important. It's probably one of the more complex sections. We'll see how we deal with it when it comes, inshallah. This is what they call tropes. Okay, so this is metaphors, allegories, similes, majaz mursal, majaz aqli, kinaya, isti'ara, tashbih, and all of its various. There's so many forms of tashbih that we'll look at. And the last thing is al-badi', and this, I think they in English we'll call it, I'm going to probably spell this wrong here, but embellishments. It's sort of an afterthought, the icing on the cake of the language. So these are things like repetition of words, rhyming prose, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, letters, the sounds of the letters and things like that. Qalb, where you use ilm and amal in the same sentence, they use the same letters. That's not the sentence, that's not a trope, that's an embellishment afterwards. This attempt to sort of, it's like makeup. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like when it's like the icing on the cake. It's like the final decoration that you put on the language as you present the sentence to the person you're speaking to. And inshallah ta'ala, next week we'll start our study of ma'ani. Enhancement is good. Sister Zahra, have you studied balagha before? Intriguing. Okay. Enhancement is good. Embellishments, enhancements, beautification. Okay. The resources we'll be using. The primary text is obviously this. We'll be reading Durusul Balagha. It has a commentary by Ar-Ramfuri, the Indian scholar. You can get various versions. This is a Barelvi version. You can get a Deobandi version. Because I don't think he was either from either camp, but you can get different versions. There's Arab versions. Loads of different publishers have published versions of the Durusul Balagha with the commentary of Shumus al-Bara'a of Ramfuri. The commentary is, in some places, is quite technical. Another good commentary I'd recommend for students studying this course with us, inshallah, is the new one that's just come out. I forget the name, by Hashim Muhammad, Sheikh Hashim Muhammad from Qalam. He has a very nice commentary. We'll be using its diagrams and things as we go forward. I've incorporated some of them into today's lesson. I thought we would start the book. We're not going to. But Sheikh Hashim Muhammad's commentary is a good commentary to get. No, not First Steps to Understanding Balagha. He's recently released a commentary on Durusul Balagha. It's a hashia in Arabic. The diagrams are phenomenal. So I'll give you an example. The diagrams, this is some of the diagrams. We'll be using them. And then he has the diagrams here. So we'll be using a lot of the diagrams because I'm a massive fan. I think it's a beautiful book. So that's the core text. So you can buy a copy, inshallah ta'ala. All the major booksellers have them. Again, I've got a feeling that somebody from High Wycombe is on this chat. So if you are, you can drop me a message. I should have a spare copy somewhere that I could possibly give to you if somebody from my local hometown is here. Otherwise, further resources, we'll be using these for the exercises. And you can read these in your spare time. So the Al-Kafi fil Balagha is in the middle. It's about a 400-page book. He's got Al-Kafi fil Sarf and Al-Kafi fil Nahw. So there is quite a good book series to get. I have the series. The other book on the right is very similar to Durusul Balagha, and many people teach it in place of Durusul Balagha. We'll be taking a lot of exercises from Al-Balaghatul Wadiha wa Daliluha fi Thawbiha al-Jadid, because Durusul Balagha is a modern textbook. Okay, so it's not like one of the classical textbooks. So these are other modern textbooks that people can get. That will be helpful, inshallah. And on the left is an English book. It's not as detailed, and it doesn't go into. It's good. It's decent as an introduction. But there's nothing very good in the English language. I'll be honest. Sheikh Hashim Muhammad's First Steps to Understanding Balagha is good, but it's very basic. But Dr. Safarik Chowdhury's book is nice, but it's too small. That's my only gripe. It doesn't have enough information in it. And I did read it over the summer while I was preparing to deliver this course. Alhamdulillah. And that's me, inshallah. So I hope that gave you some encouragement to sign up, inshallah, sign up to the program. I assume they'll send out details on how to sign up to the course, inshallah ta'ala. And I really look forward to reading some balagha together and looking at the Quran into more detail. I hope this lesson has been beneficial for people, inshallah ta'ala. And what I'll do at this point, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this a blessed gathering. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends abundant salutations upon Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the greatest of all people who ever spoke anything that there was to be spoken in this great month of Rabiul Awwal. If anybody has any questions, inshallah, I'll stick around and answer any questions. In level 2 of Sibawayh, I'm teaching Tahdhib Tasrif al-Izzi. So Sarf, I teach Sarf, and then I'm also teaching comprehension, which is basically I give them Arabic readings to do, and then I come and just see how they're translating. But as part of the Arabic comprehension, I've introduced Tarkib. So every week you will have to do I'll give you portions of the Quran, and then we'll do grammatical analysis together. And if there's time, I'll do some balagha with them as well. But generally, that's more grammatically focused. So I teach 2 lessons from the 3. I do not teach the Nahwa component of the Sibawayh program, but I teach the other 2 components. And if people are interested, either you can join the Sibawayh program. If there's standalone lessons you want, for Karima, I also teach similar lessons. So both of those options are available, but speak to the team at White Thread and see what they say. And then if you still feel like, I don't know, if they say you can't do standalone lessons, I don't know why. If you're asking because you want to do those lessons specifically, let's see how that goes, inshallah. I'll speak to them and then get back to me. And we can talk. I'll put my email here so people can contact me if they so wish. Al-Kawthari. There is a recording, inshallah. That will be sent out to everybody. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, this is my email address. So drop me an email if there's any further information you want from me specifically, but speak to the White Thread team about what you want to, anything. What books readings would you recommend for students currently studying Dars al-Nizami? It depends on what subject specifically. I can give recommendations in most things apart from hadith. Hadith is generally like commentaries and things. I'm not a hadith expert. So if Sister Aqila could just clarify that. What kind of readings are you talking about specifically? Sister Zahra, is there a recording of the session available? Yes, there is. Okay, so they'll send out the recording to everybody who signed up to the taster session. What level of Arabic grammar understanding do we need to benefit from this Durus al-Balagha? You need to know I'll tell you, I'll be quite honest. I think people, as long as you've done like second year of a Dars al-Nizami program, you'll be quite comfortable. You'll be okay. So something that equivalent. So if you've done like Ilm al-Sigha, you've done Ajrumiyya, you've done something of that level, maybe even Tasheel al-Sarf or something introductory in Sarf, it'll be good for you. The only parts, I'll be very honest, the parts you might struggle with in the text is the translations of the poetry, because he brings like Mutanabbi and things. Mutanabbi and Diwan al-Hamasa and things you study late in the Dars al-Nizami tradition. So what I will recommend then is, but what I'm thinking in my head is I will translate those poems for you myself, and then I'll ask you to find the rhetorical devices. So I'll work with you to translate the poetry, because that's the only section I feel like a student would struggle with, unless you're comfortable with Arabic poetry. You've read like the Mu'allaqat, and you've read Nabigha and all of the famous ones. Sheikh Hashim Muhammad's website, a very amazing teacher, and is worth checking out his lessons to supplement any other learning you're doing. Will there be a lot of Arabic poetry involved? No, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the examples they give a lot of the time are Arabic poetry, but I will try my best to incorporate as many Quranic examples as I can. And for me, the majority of exercises we will give will be based on the Quran. That's my aim, inshallah ta'ala. But at some points you will have to read some. This is the thing, and I'll say this very honestly, is every mufassir knows Arabic poetry, because you can't understand the Quran and disassociate it from the context in which it was revealed. And it was revealed in response to Imr al-Qais and Labid and Tarafa and Antara and Nabigha and Khansa and all of the Khansa, very famous female poet, but then so you can't then say, oh, let's understand the Quran and not engage with poetry in some way, shape or form. Okay, so there has to be some reading of Jahili poetry, but I will try to focus a lot more on the Quran itself. But for the examples and stuff, I don't think there's any harm in reading the Jahili poets. And obviously, this is part of our tradition as well. Like all the Mufassirun do, Ibn Kathir onwards, like everybody does it. Okay, next. Who was the author of the Quran before Sheikh Muhammad Kalla? Somebody answered that. When are the lessons? They will be Thursday mornings at this time, 9 a.m. every morning, inshallah ta'ala. Sheikh Ali Hani Al-Aqrabawi. Aqrabawi. He has a YouTube channel. Oh, I've spelled it wrong as well. Aqrabawi. He has a YouTube channel. He speaks Arabic only though. So but he has students, Abdul Rahim Riyasat, our teacher Sheikh Sulaiman Vanel, who you maybe can benefit from. But Sheikh Ali Hani Al-Aqrabawi, he has written many books. He's got commentary on the Ajrumiyah, if people have studied. He does Maqasid al-Suwar. He's just phenomenal. He's phenomenal, mashallah. But he's not really for beginner students. So I just put that caveat there. He's for more sort of people who have the ability to do tafsir and other such things. He's got tarkib and everything of Juz'ama. He's actually phenomenal. Yeah. When are the lessons daytime? I think so. I think there's benefit in rhetoric in and of itself for sure. But the Mawadi Durus al-Arabiya, this is another, here's another scholar. This is for people who have Arabic. I would recommend getting these books. If you can access Muhyiddin Abdul Hamid, that's another author I really recommend in Arabic. Anyone doing Dars Nizami, by the way, because the sister asked and I didn't get back to that question. So let me just go back to that. What was the Quran? To strengthen, deepen understanding of the Quran, you have to read tafsir. If you're going to pick one tafsir in the Quran, you're going to read for linguistic understanding of the Quran, then I would say read the tafsir of Abu Sa'ud Effendi, Irshad al-Aql al-Salim. Abu Sa'ud Effendi. You can get this app on my tablet. I use it all the time. It's called Al-Bahith al-Qur'ani. Al-Bahith al-Qur'ani, I think. One of my students found it, and it's remarkable. And it has all of the I'rab al-Quran books, all of the major tafasir. You just put in surah, verse number, and then you just pick what you want to. Trust me, it's phenomenal. Irshad al-Aql al-Salim is a short tafsir. He does short linguistic tafsir of every verse. If you have capability, then obviously the great tafsir is Razi, Mafatih al-Ghaib. Alusi is very long, and he plagiarizes a lot, but that means that his tafsir is loads of different tafasir incorporated into one. If you have time, then you can. I'd recommend reading Alusi's tafsir, Ruh al-Ma'ani. But otherwise, I would say for me, I'll be reading Abu Sa'ud Effendi and Tafsir Razi. A modern tafsir that has basic linguistic understandings is Tantawi's Al-Wasit, which is really nice. If you can access Bayan al-Quran of Mullah Shaf Ali Tanwi, he has some good linguistic discussions in there. If you know Urdu, the Ma'arif al-Quran of Mullah Idris Khan Dehlawi is very good. But Ibn Ashur and Razi are the big tafsirs you should really go for. If you want something more basic, Irshad al-Aql al-Salim is probably a good place to start just because it's shorter tafsir. Arabic level basic, can you benefit? I think you can still benefit for sure. But Allah Alam, maybe speak to the team and see if you can extend sort of maybe I don't know. I don't know exactly. I think there is definitely benefit. I will try to keep things as simple as possible without going into too much extraneous detail and things. You will need, when I say you need Arabic, I mean more you'll need, there's certain aspects that will definitely need Arabic. Like there's a discussion in Fasaha where he goes into Taqdeem and Ta'khir, you need to know Nahw and Sarf there. But after that, most of the book actually doesn't access much grammar. It's more sentence structure and meanings. So some areas you might lose, but maybe you can go back to them later years and pick them up again. But generally, I think you can access most of this with a basic understanding. If you've done something like the Ajrumiyah, you'll be fine. And you've done something basic and stuff. What's the course duration? This course will run for a year, for about 33 weeks. My aim is to finish the text in that time. And then I was hoping we'd finish it easily and then go into reading some poetry together. But I think the poetry is a dream. But we'll definitely finish the text together. And if Allah gives us tawfiq, the next year we'll read the Banat Su'ad, some Imrul Qais. How intensive would you say the course is? Would it be a more medium pace to cater for a faster range of students or a faster pace to push the students? We have 30 weeks. We have, I've got like 5 different copies of the Durus al-Balagha. I need to find at least one of them now. Okay, let me just grab my notes and put that on. Okay, in Indian version, this is I don't know where this is from. Okay, let's just say Durus al-Balagha with the commentary is about 100 pages. We will need to do about 3-4 pages a lesson. There'll be exercises to do as well. We won't be able to dwell on things for too long. We will have to constantly keep moving if we want to finish the text. So that's a point I will make. I may ask for recordings. The problem with recordings is that people might not turn up to the live lessons, which means that it's just me talking to myself, which is great. It's not great. It's like insanity, but I'd rather people had attended the online sessions live. Um, but I will ask for recordings. If I ask for recordings and people stop turning up, then I'll stop the recordings. But that might help people if we move quickly, that they can keep going back and reviewing the sessions. And I will give you supplementary material that you can use and watch and benefit from to help you garner further understanding. And then we can clarify stuff in lessons. Where did I study? I studied in Darul Bari. I graduated from Darul Bari in 2016. I was one of the last classes to study. Actually, Hazrat Mullah Yusuf Matala Sahib Rahmatullah Ali came back full time for us. We used to have him nearly every single day. And then he passed away a few years later. So yes, I was 2016 Darul Bari graduate. And then I've carried on studying afterwards, alhamdulillah, as well. So I've studied Kalam and Mantiq with various teachers, and I've studied Balagha and some of the language sciences as well with various other teachers as well, alhamdulillah. Okay. On that note, we've gone like 10 minutes over. I do apologize. I'll finish here. I'll stop sharing. Any other questions, just send them my way. Otherwise, we can finish here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, yeah, you can slowly start disappearing. I normally stay until the last person leaves. So if you have any private questions you don't want other people to hear, you can wait till most people have left, and then wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You can ask me whatever you want to ask, inshallah.